Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Introducing enbix webinar. My name is Andrea Johansik, and I am a program specialist with the Emissions Neutral Buildings team at Alberta EcoTrust Foundation. I'm really delighted that you're all joining us this afternoon to learn more about enbix, the Emissions Neutral Buildings Information Exchange. So I'd like to start off just by acknowledging the land where myself and my colleagues are joining us from. I'm personally joining from Mohkinstsis, which is the name of a place otherwise known as Calgary. This is in Treaty 7 territory in southern Alberta, the traditional and ancestral lands of the Niitsitapi, the Siksika, Kainai, Impikani, the Tsuut'ina, and the Iyarhe Nakota First Nations, the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney. Our head office at Alberta EcoTrust is located in the Calgary Elbow Métis District within the Battle River Territory. My colleagues Kate and Andrea are also joining today from Treaty 6, which is the traditional lands of the Nehio, Dene, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, Blackfoot, as well as the Métis and Inuit. I'd like to make this acknowledgement an act of gratitude towards those whose lands we work within and visit, and to all the First Nations, Métis and Inuit who have stewarded this land for many generations. I'm personally committed to understanding past harms and injustices towards Indigenous peoples, and today we're talking about buildings and the built environment, and I was reflecting on how that can include the built environment, how our urban environments are a physical reminder of colonization, but I was also reflecting on ways that we can design and build our environments in a way that support reconciliation. So I invite you to continue reflecting on that a little on your own and beyond this webinar today. As I explain the agenda, I will ask Kate to pop up a bit of a poll on the screen when she gets a chance. We just want to know who's here today. And I know folks are trickling in, so when you come, just let us know where you're joining from, what part of the field you work in, and whether you're sort of primarily working in residential or commercial. That will help us. So we're going to go over a bit of a presentation today, just introducing you to enbix, and then we're going to dive into some of our specific services and offerings and tools and ways that you can get involved today. We will then have a Q&A period. We'll aim to wrap up this webinar by 12:55 so that you have a few minutes to get to your next meeting or whatever else you have on this afternoon. So I'm going to introduce my colleagues, Kate Woloshin, Program Specialist at Alberta EcoTrust Foundation, and Andrea Linsky, Director of Emissions Neutral Buildings at Alberta EcoTrust Foundation. And I'm going to pass it over to Andrea to start us off.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to have you here all for our first webinar for enbix, and we're excited to inform you of all the exciting things we're up to here. So as a starter, I'd like to introduce Alberta EcoTrust. Some of you may be familiar with us, but for those of you who aren't, Alberta EcoTrust Foundation has been around for over 30 years doing work in Alberta, specifically around resourcing and supporting environmental action. We were actually developed or founded by I guess you could say, unlikely partnership between environmental NGOs and corporate partnerships, oil and gas. And ever since that initial beginning of Alberta EcoTrust, we've been continuing to bring together, in some cases, unlikely partners to have complex and exciting discussions around the environment in Alberta. And so the work that we're doing fits very nicely into that pocket of description of how we've existed over the last 30 years. And our big focus for enbix is focusing on climate resilience and emissions reductions in the built environment. So with that, we took a big step about a year ago to bring together some players in Calgary and Edmonton across Alberta to start talking about what is needed in the industry. And there was really a discussion about how there was no one convening all the different players who are doing emissions neutral or high performance buildings work in Alberta. And there wasn't really a clear place for people to go to get information, to build knowledge and share capacity. Or build capacity. And so with that, we actually got together some of our key partners, and I'll sort of mention that we came from two big players that were related in their end goals and interests. We came from the interest, and most of our funding comes from municipalities. So the municipalities in Alberta are the big players that Edmonton and Calgary are really saying, you know, this is an entity that needs to exist in Alberta. We need someone who will achieve this goal of accelerating building and renovation practices that lead to emissions neutral built environments for new and existing buildings across Alberta. And then we also talked quite a bit with the industry partners, and the industry players were very excited to be able to find a place to come and talk about how they could get ahead of code, or sort of take those steps to share the great things we're already doing around emissions neutral buildings in this province, and figure out how we can build upon that as code comes to play. So from that, we developed our guiding principles, and really the guiding principles here at enbix are about collaboration. When you sort of look at the whole thing, we're supporting all building types. We're looking at co-benefits and all the different options we have for trying to reduce, bring down costs associated with high performance construction, and look for things, ways to integrate adaptation and embodied carbon related work that we're doing. Looking at we wanted to make sure that we were led by industry. So this has got to be the industry telling us what we need to be doing, how we need to be sharing knowledge. We want to make sure that we've got a diverse representation from industry. So in a few slides, I'll show you the breakdown of some of the players that we're hoping to talk with. We know that there's a lot of fantastic work already happening in Alberta, and we want to amplify, not duplicate that work. So you'll see more and more enbix partnering with other entities that already exist, or working to amplify their great work. And that's sort of ties to where there are gaps in the industry. We hope to partner with players to sort of elevate that work and the work that we're doing. We also acknowledge that there's a lot of great work happening around Alberta, or outside of Alberta, on emissions neutral buildings. And so we hope to be able to bring some of that knowledge into Alberta while still making it highly relevant for the market here. Some of the things that we do like to talk a little bit about is what we're not. And I think that helps clarify things a lot for folks. Essentially, we are about sharing knowledge and capacity, but we are not going to be a big, strong lobby group. We're going to gather information from the industry and bring it forward, and perhaps have that information share how code is, inform how code is developed, or how systems are developed at municipalities or governments to be able to support emissions neutral buildings, but there wouldn't be direct lobbying work in that. And we are also not going to be a certification body. So we will work with existing certification bodies out there to elevate their work, but we won't be doing that ourselves. As I mentioned, we are industry advised. And so that our executive advisory committee is a group of individuals from across Alberta who are leading the way in emissions neutral buildings work in many different fields. And so their job is to help guide and advise the work that's happening at enbix, to make sure that we're doing work that is relevant and helpful for the industry as a whole. And when I talk about the industry as a whole, we talk about a true building ecosystem. So we're talking about everyone from the policymakers all the way through to the actual people who are building homes and buildings and renovating buildings in this province. So operators, the trades, manufacturers, suppliers, designers, engineers, home builders, anyone in the whole construction field are folks that we're going to be trying to engage with, people that we're going to be talking to about where the barriers are, and people that we're trying to provide the services and offerings that we're going to go through it with you today for. So just to wrap up the high level information of what enbix is, I'll tell you a little bit about the core objectives. So built on a foundation of strong operational excellence here within the host organization of Alberta EcoTrust, enbix hopes to share knowledge and build capacity, foster innovation and leadership, and strengthen collaboration. And so we're going to go through some of the programs and offerings, Andrea and Kate will, ways that we're doing this. And we've already started to do a lot of it in the work that we're presenting to you. We've got great partnerships with groups like SORIA and the Calgary Construction Association that we've built so far, and fantastic partners with both major municipalities, the City of Edmonton and Calgary. So I'll hand it off now to go through some of the core offerings we have.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Just finding my mute button there. I'm going to start off by talking about our event. So Andrea mentioned that we are all about sharing knowledge and building capacity. And so events are, of course, a really important way that NBix will be doing this. I'm going to talk about our events calendar, as well as explain how we're hosting and partnering on events. Our events calendar is located right on our website, enbix.ca, or you can type in calendar.enbix.ca. And this calendar is really your go-to place for emissions neutral buildings events in Alberta. So we curate this, and it's also filterable by location, by type, and by subject. I recommend subscribing to the calendar. You can add it as a separate calendar so that you can toggle it on and off to see what events are coming up next week or next month. The calendar also relies on contributions from folks like yourself who are hosting and running relevant events. So it is easy to become a contributor. You do get a password, and then you can join sort of at any time to edit or add your event. Recommend getting your communications folks involved when they're helping out with promotions. We are also here to help upload events if you need support. We just need some basic information. So to become a contributor, just go on the website and scroll to the bottom. When you do upload an event, there's a few criteria that you'll be asked to follow. And I will mention that these criteria generally also apply to our resource library, and Kate's going to talk about that in a minute in more detail. But generally, we need to focus on emissions neutral buildings. And so that might seem obvious, but it doesn't have to be a perfect, case study of a net zero building or something, but we're really looking for components of emissions neutral buildings. So examples of events we might highlight here are, a cold climate heat pump study presentation, or, a session on electrifying residential buildings. What might be out of scope, though, are like those sort of peripheral subjects, such as something that's really focused on public electric vehicle charging, or proposed wind energy developments and somewhere in Alberta. Like those are not directly related to buildings. Of course, they're really important. But if you're not sure, you can always ask and check in with us. Second, relevant to Alberta. So again, this doesn't necessarily have to be an event in Alberta. We actually have the Retrofit Canada conference featured, which is being held in Vancouver this year, and it's a national conference, but it is relevant. There will be lots of great content relevant to Albertans, and we're also going to be there helping represent Alberta at that event. We generally don't accept member-only events, so one of our goals is to make all this really accessible to everybody. Feel free to upload an event that is paid or unpaid, but we'll generally shy away from those restricted to members, but we may have exceptions to that. And also, we don't do sales events. So as Andrea covered in our guiding principles, we're not really here to sell certain technologies, but we would promote the science or technology of a certain product. We just wouldn't focus on the sales. That's a bit about the events calendar. We're going to be leading lots of events ourselves. And of course, our goal is to share knowledge, build capacity, and there's lots of different ways that we're going to be able to do that, such as webinars like this one, training events, workshops. We're really hoping to organize a mid-construction blower door test at some point, so site visit, networking, and communities of practice. I'll talk about those a little later on. But as Andrea mentioned, we don't want to duplicate anything that's already out there, which is why we are going to be partnering on events as well. So perhaps have a look and see if there's one way that NBix could help support your work. This really depends on what you need, but we have a few different ways that we might be able to provide support for your event. So this could be specific funding. enbix doesn't have, grant program. Alberta Eco Trust has some grant programs, but we may be able to provide, specific pieces of funding depending on what the event is. We might also be able to support just with some of the planning or expertise, making connections. And then we are, of course, happy to share and promote through our newsletter, our social media, our other communications channels. So I'm going to pass it over to Kate now to chat more about our resource library and a couple other of our services and offerings.
Yes, so I put a link in the chat just for enbix.ca, and that's where you can find all of our services and offerings here. But the first one I'm going to go through is the resource library. So you'll just come to enbix.ca and you can see resources here at the top. So you can just click on it, and we have curated a library to include the success stories and lessons learned that apply to emissions neutral buildings in Alberta and Alberta's climate. Some of these are curated by us here at enbix, and some work has been completed by different organizations, and we wish to highlight and share it. For work completed by different groups, a summary of the content and how it applies to Alberta is included for each one. This library includes articles, case studies, guidelines, industry leader profiles, reports, tools, webinars, and videos. Then the library will continue to grow as time goes on. So you can filter each of these different resources by type and topic, such as building envelope, made in Alberta, if it's got renewable energy, heat pumps, and it'll kind of filter them all down there. We also have filters by project type, like deep energy retrofits or new construction. If a project was completed in a certain year, the building size, the location or climate zones. Other topics, like if it's a passive house, if it's kind of structured towards affordability or equity, if it's got an embodied carbon piece, etc. So you can just go through and click through any of these here. And feel free to access any of our resources. They're all free to access. We've included a search bar on the top here, so if you're just looking for a specific word, you can type it in and bring up each of those that are associated with electrification. If you cannot find a resource in our library, you can come here to the bottom of the page and click request a resource button at the bottom. It's going to bring you to this contact us form. Within the form, you'll find a list of items, some allowing you to submit or request a resource. After submitting your resource, our team will review your submission, get in touch with you, and take the necessary steps. Our budget and work planning will determine our availability to fill in the gaps and resources that we will need. And alternatively, we may explore the possibility of incorporating your request into our research exchange program, which I'll discuss more shortly. If you have a resource that you want to share with us, use this contact form again and click, where is it? Submit a resource. And it's going to bring you to this different submit a resource form here, where you can fill out your resource, your name, organization, email, title of your resource, or if you're just a person that really doesn't like forms, you can also email at us at info@enbix.ca and we'll get back to you as well. So that's kind of it for the resource library. The next one I'll go through is the industry training in Alberta. On the industry training page, we have highlighted training and professional development opportunities related to emissions neutral buildings in Alberta. We've also included courses that are offered outside of Alberta, like BCIT, if the content is relevant to Alberta. We intend to identify additional training opportunities as they are presented and created to fill skills gaps in the industry. So I'm not going to click through all of these, but I will highlight SAIT's high performance residential design and construction certificate It's ideal for those currently in the residential construction industry, including architects, designers, engineers, site managers, or tradespeople, or just people that are curious about learning more about high performance construction. Personally, I'm taking all the courses in the certificate, and I found it really well written and valuable information, and it's been really fun so far. If there's anything out of date on this page, just click on this contact form, and then there's a training update area that you can click through and just let us know. And now I'll walk you through the industry research question exchange. So the industry research question exchange offers industry and research organizations, including academia, an opportunity to collaborate on research questions around emissions neutral buildings. So to participate, you can just open and read and explore the research question exchange here towards the bottom of the page. And more information is available when you click the view details list on any of the questions. It'll bring you to our Google document here, where the full published list of all the questions on this other tab here. Upon going through the list, if you have any published research that addresses any of the questions posted on the database, please submit your findings to the resource library and include a note about which question your research addresses. Alternatively, if there's a new question that you would like answered and added to the database, you can use the contact form and let us know, and we will try to get that addressed for you or added to the list. Communication and, if possible, collaboration amongst all the industry members and researchers can help find solutions and shape the future of all these emissions neutral buildings in Alberta. So if you're interested in sharing your knowledge by joining this initiative, please reach out to us. So far, the Pembina Institute, Red Deer Polytechnic, Northwest College, and the Construction Innovation Center are participating in the industry questions exchange. So all questions, responses, and discussions will be archived in enbix for future reference and research, whether that's through, it'll be linked here once it's completed, and it'll likely spin up a resource as well. That's it for me, and I'll pass it back to Andrea.
Thanks so much, Kate. So now that we sort of talked about some of our tools on our website, I'm going to talk about some ways that we're collaborating and working in partnership with others through enbix. So if you're not familiar with the term, communities of practice are really spaces for practitioners to come together and focus on important issues, discuss issues and opportunities, and work through problems together. So we have a number of communities of practice that are either under development or running currently, and each are different. They have their own goal, their own plan, their own guiding documents, terms of reference. And so we expect this to grow and sort of change as enbix evolves. So I'll just go over the ones that are either in development or running. enbix Calgary, I'll talk a bit more about that at the end, but really this is a place for those who are really operating within the municipal limits of Calgary or have Calgary specific expertise. Our training alliance is currently under development, but the intention for this is that it will provide or promote training opportunities, identify gaps in training, and explore some of the barriers in course uptake so that we can help to fill those gaps. And so the Training Alliance will include academics from post-secondary institutions, as well as other training and educational organizations in Alberta. Our municipal community of practice has been running for the past year, and there are a number of municipal administrators joining to connect on the aspects of emissions neutral programming within their cities, towns, and we expect that may grow. We are also currently finalizing an agreement with the Carbon Leadership Forum Alberta, that should say Alberta, whose goal is really to coordinate events to empower industry professionals to reduce embodied carbon from buildings and infrastructure. And so, yes, we hope to include embodied carbon as part of our work. So now I'll talk a bit more broadly about our partnerships. There's so many ways to partner with us, and I'll walk through a couple ways that we're sort of formally recognizing partners on our website. I'm just going to share my screen here. So as Andrea mentioned earlier, she mentioned the City of Calgary and Edmonton provide funding. I'd also like to recognize Climate Innovation Fund and the Government of Canada. So our funding partners are really those that are providing us with the core funding to do our day-to-day work here at enbix. We may also have funding partners that provide funding for specific or discrete pieces of work. So sponsoring one of our events or pieces of research. So there are opportunities to fund our work here at enbix. We also have in-kind partners. So those that are providing non-monetary contributions that represent, a time or resources. And there's a certain amount of sharing and contribution as part of enbix. So we can't recognize absolutely everybody that participates in enbix, but these are here for those that are really providing significant time and resources above and beyond sort of the normal participation levels. I also wanted to take time to highlight our industry leaders. So we have a number of organizations highlighted on our website here that we consider industry leaders. These are organizations that are working towards emissions neutral buildings here in Alberta. They're learning and sharing and partnering with us. And if you think that is you and you don't see your logo here, please email us. Send us your logo and the reasons why you are an industry leader, and we can consider including you on this page. So I think the main point here is our partnerships can take many forms. They may not fit into one of these categories that we outline here on our website. We are here to partner with you, here to start a conversation about how we can support one another's efforts. And then lastly, I wanted to mention the Alberta Energy Efficiency and Innovation Summit is coming up in April, and there are going to be a number of events focusing on net zero and emissions neutral buildings. So it's a great way to kind of find out the latest of what's going on in Alberta. There is an early bird registration link available now, and we will definitely be there and hope to see you there. Couple asks for everyone here. Please subscribe to our newsletter. We don't send out too many. We send about once a month, and we just highlight what's going on, upcoming events, and it's easy to subscribe at enbix.ca/subscribe. That's not you. You can also follow us on social media. We have LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube only at this time. Alberta Eco Trust Foundation does have accounts on all the platforms, but we encourage you to follow enbix. And if you have any questions that don't get answered later, you can reach out to us at any time at info@enbix.ca. So we are really excited for you to get involved. And I just want to take time on behalf of all three of us to say thank you for joining and getting involved.